Bob, I believe you have a script to read.
Well, I think you call the meeting to order, and then I say good evening, everybody, and welcome. The board welcomes the public's participation in this public meeting, and I need to ask if everybody can hear me. Yeah.
Yes.
No, we can hear.
My name is Bob Shaver. I'm the general manager of the Alameda County Water District. Conducting virtual board meetings is still a new experience for our agency, so please bear with us if we experience any technical challenges this evening. You may download the board meeting agenda by visiting acwd.org. If you're participating by Zoom, generally we ask that all panelists and participants keep themselves muted unless speaking. You will be placed on mute by the district secretary as well. The district secretary will unmute participants at the appropriate time when the board is receiving public comments. You will be able to view presentation materials as they are presented during the Zoom webinar. At any time, you may submit a question or raise your hand if you are muted and have any questions that you would like to address the board. For those that are participating use phone audio, please put your phone on mute to assure the best sound quality. Also, if you're using Zoom and a phone, please be aware that there can be feedback loop issues. It is possible to use both devices at once. The presentation slides are located on the district's website for this evening's meeting. If you have access to the website, you may download the slides and follow along with the presentation that way. We ask that you remain on mute and refrain from making comments until prompted by the district secretary or board president for those that are participating by phone. This Zoom webinar will be recorded and will be made accessible to the public for future viewing. The board has 3 closed session items this evening that will be covered near the end of the meeting. Members of the board may remain logged in to this Zoom webinar, or members of the public may remain logged into this Zoom webinar if you're interested in the board's reporting out of closed session. Thanks for attending. So with that, that's our housekeeping, Madam President.
Thank you very much. Then let's start with roll call. Secretary, please call the roll.
Sure. Directors Akbari.
Here.
Gunther.
Here.
Sethy.
Here.
Weed.
Here.
And Huang.
Here. And Director Akbari, would you lead us in a salute to the flag, please?
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I just have to grab the right mouse. All right, public comments. Do we have any members of the public that wish to address the board? Members of the public may address the board on any issues not listed on the agenda, which are within the purview of the Alameda County Water District. A 5-minute limit is customary. However, we may decide to adjust the actual time allotted to accommodate the number of people. Members of the public who wish to address the board on a scheduled agenda item will be given the opportunity to do so. At this point, do I have any members of the public that wish to address the board? I do not see anything in the Q&A or chat or anybody raise hand in my Zoom participant panel. So I'm going to take that as nobody wished to speak to us. Then let's move on to item 4, consent calendar. Do I have a motion to add items to consent calendar?
I'll go ahead and move we add item 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, 5.5, and yeah, 5.5. I'd like to remove item 5.6 as I have a conflict with that item.
So just let me clarify, the motion is to add item 5.1 to 5.5 to the consent calendar, correct?
That is correct.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
All right. Do I have a motion to move consent calendar as amended?
Motion.
Second.
Okay. Directors Akbari.
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Sethy,
Oh, hold on. Question for Andy. Andy, I am getting really bad audio. It's breaking up. Are you capturing this?
yes.
Okay, I think I might be the only one that's having problems. So
Yeah.
I assume we have a motion and a second?
Yeah, so we had the motion by Director Gunther and a second by Director Akbari. So roll call is Director Akbari.
Right, Andy, I need to
Yes.
text you because if my connection keeps on being so bad, somebody else might need to run this thing.
Okay. Director Gunther.
This is Director Sethy. I'm really having a lot of problem with the audio. I don't know why. Keeps breaking up.
Ew.
Yeah, I've got Judy breaking up, but I can hear the others okay.
Yeah, Judy is the one that I'm having problems hearing.
Yeah, and it could be a connection issue with her Wi-Fi. She may have to restart.
This is Paul. I'm going to step away for about 60 seconds, okay?
Okay.
Andy, I think we need to unmute Bob's mic.
Oh, okay. Okay, Bob.
Thank you, Andy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So one thing I've read about these Zoom conferences is if somebody has sort of broadband limitations, that can be a factor, especially when you're using video. So one thing we might ask Judy to try is just to turn off her camera and also to make sure that she doesn't have any bandwidth hungry things going on in her house. Like if there's a Netflix movie playing or something like that somewhere else.
Sure.
No Netflix movie playing. What's going on is Zoom decided to push an update.
Ah.
I told it no, but it decided to freeze everything. So
Well, you sound pretty good now.
Who's the
okay. So I am not sure if I'm sharing video or not.
You're not currently.
I do not know why. It says I'm sharing video, but you see a pretty great screen, so I don't know what's going on. And it's the front camera, so whatever. Okay, so where are we? Do we have a motion for the consent calendar?
Okay, so we had items 5.1 through 5.5 added to the consent calendar. We had a motion by Director Gunther and a second by Director Akbari. And so I'm going to take the vote again, or I'm going to take the vote. So Directors Akbari.
Aye.
Directors Gunther.
Aye.
Sethy.
Aye, and I can hear Judy very clearly now.
Okay. Directors Weed
Aye.
and Huang.
Aye.
Okay.
So do I have a motion to move the consent calendar as amended?
I'll move the consent calendar as amended.
Second from
second.
Sethy.
Okay, Director Sethy seconds. So roll call, Directors Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Huang.
Aye. All right, so that's finished up the consent calendar. Then let's move on to item 5.6.
Okay, I will be leaving the meeting. I have a conflict, this property conflict within 1,000 feet. So I'll be leaving the meeting now.
How do we make sure you're in jail?
Leaving the meeting now. Thank you.
All right, this is not working. Director Akbari, can you take over the meeting while I try to troubleshoot on my side?
Director Huang, you're breaking up again severely.
If I heard Director Huang correctly, I think she's going to try to rejoin the meeting. Should I continue, Bob?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think that's what you requested.
Okay.
So you're up to item 5.6, and I can take that if you'd like.
Okay.
So item 5.6
Yes, please.
involves the authorization of amendment to professional services agreement for engineering services for the Alvarado Niles Pipeline Seismic Improvement Project Phase 2. And this will be covered by Manager of Engineering and Technology Services, Ed Stevenson. Unless he is muted.
All right. I
No,
think
he's on.
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me all?
We
Yes.
can hear you.
Okay, I'll just read the
Yes, I
summary
can hear
and
you.
open it up for any questions. The Alvarado Niles Pipeline Seismic Improvement Project will improve the district's water transmission and distribution system reliability and enhance the Alvarado Niles Pipeline's ability to withstand seismic forces and liquefaction-induced ground deformation. The project will replace existing older asbestos cement and steel pipe of various diameters and is being implemented in 2 phases. Design of phase 1 is complete and construction is expected to commence within the next few weeks. Design of phase 2 is underway and additional engineering design services are required to complete the phase 2 design. In addition, engineering services in support of construction of both phases are required. There's adequate funding in the approved 2-year budget for this current fiscal year expenditure, and the fiscal year 2021 budget will include amounts necessary to complete the project. The project, which is part of the district's main renewal and seismic upgrades program, was most recently reviewed with the Engineering and Information Technology Committee on January 15, 2020. And the project will help meet the district's strategic plan goal 1.1, efficiently manage and maintain our infrastructure to ensure reliability. And so as the summary points out, the idea here is to add services to this contract for the completion of phase 2 design for elements that were not included previously with the BKF engineers contract, and to also provide for engineering support during both phases in construction. So recommendation is by motion, authorize the general manager to execute an amendment to the professional services agreement with BKF engineers in amount not to exceed $196,976 for engineering services for the Alvarado Niles Pipeline Seismic Improvement Project, job 21192. And I'd be happy to address any questions.
Do we have any questions from the directors?
None from Director Sethy.
Thank you. Director Weed,
None.
do we have any questions from the public? Hearing none, we'll move to a motion. Is there a motion on the item?
I'll make a motion to approve staff recommendation on item 5.6.
Do we have a second?
John Weed, second.
Great.
Okay, I'll take roll call now. Directors Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther, Sethy,
Aye.
Huang, Weed,
Aye.
and Huang.
Okay, so Director Gunther has recused himself. Director Huang is experiencing technical issues. District General Counsel, is it possible for Director Huang to indicate her vote later, or do we just say that this is a 3-0 vote and in the minutes basically say that she was having technical issues?
Yeah, can you hear me okay? Am I unmuted?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It takes 3 affirmative
Yes.
votes. So there were 3 affirmative votes. I think it's fine for the motion to pass by 3-0 and let the minutes reflect that Director Gunther recused himself and Director Huang was not present during the meeting due to technical difficulties at this time.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
so the item passes 3-0. Would you like me to go ahead and begin 5-7, Vice President Akbari?
I would like to wait to begin 5-7 until we at least get Director Gunther back.
Yeah, I'm going to contact him right now.
Of course.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, he's been contacted. He's coming back.
Okay, wonderful.
All right, Andy, am I back?
You're back. I see you and I hear you.
All right, sorry about that. I actually ended up ditching the surface. It totally crashed on me.
Oh, no.
All right, I am so sorry. So where are we? Did Director Akbari take over the meeting?
He did, and I just asked Director Gunther to come back onto the meeting. We're finished with item 5.6.
Thank you very much.
So while you were away, President Huang,
Looks like we should Gunther here as
Akbari
well.
reorganized the committee structure a little bit. He also made some appointments and made some other changes to the organization. I hope you don't mind.
Oh, totally. I love any decision he made. Or should I just blame this on, should I start a conspiracy theory saying Director Akbari has it in with Microsoft and manufacturer of the Surface tablet? We could get really crazy with this. No. Thank you for taking over the meeting, Director Akbari. And sorry about all these
My pleasure.
difficulties. I think my poor Surface might have to give it up to Ghost because it's stuck booting.
Hey, Jim, this is Paul.
I'm
I just
back.
I just granted you a Monopoly get out of jail card, so now you owe me one.
All right, so we're back.
Yes, we are on item 5.7.
All right, so let's move on to item 5.7, please.
Sure. Item 5.7 involves an authorization to enter in purchase agreements for water transfer between sellers and buyers, agreements among the Department of Water Resources, sellers, and the Alameda County Water District for conveyance of transfer water for the filing of notices of exemption under CEQA and for a reserve appropriation for extraordinary dry year water supply expenses. And Ms. Heides will cover this, our Manager of Water Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Great. Well, as noted in the staff report in your packet, we have a little bit more information to supplement the written report. So I'll go ahead and get going with that. Water year 2020 is one of the driest years in the district's 106-year history. The district has sufficient supplies to meet projected demands for calendar year 2020, as well as to prepare for a potentially dry 2021. However, dry year operations require utilization of the district's more expensive water supplies. Consequently, staff is requesting a reserve appropriation of $2.1 million to cover the extraordinary dry year expenses for the end of fiscal year 2019-20. In order to minimize these extraordinary costs, as well as to maintain storage in the Niles Cone groundwater basin, staff further recommends that the board authorize the general manager to sign agreements to purchase and take delivery of additional lower-cost water supply from the State Water Contractor's 2020 Dry Year Transfer Program. This proposed action was reviewed with the Water Resources and Conservation Committee meeting on March 25th, 2020. As a supplement to the information provided in the board packet, staff has more up-to-date information that as of present, the district has reserved 2,700 acre-feet of additional water from north of Delta agriculture interests at a unit cost of $350 per acre-feet, totaling $945,000. Considering Delta transfer losses, which range from 25 to 30%, this will result in approximately 2,000 acre-feet of additional water supply for the district. These numbers are subject to change until all agreements are finalized, but staff anticipates that this water will help offset expenses that would otherwise be incurred for the purchase of more expensive water supplies during this dry year. Staff has re-optimized the district's production and supply management strategies for the calendar year and projects that we will reduce operating expenses by $2 million as compared to our previously anticipated dry year expenses. At the same time, the district will be able to maintain healthy levels in the Niles Cone groundwater basin and be prepared for 2021 should we experience a second dry year. Last, just to note that since the water transfers through this program will be completed within 1 year, they are considered exempt under the California Environmental Quality Act. The district will be named as a responsible party in the CEQA documents filed by the individual sellers and will need to file a notice of exemption as noted in the staff report. So board authorization of this item tonight will help meet the district's strategic plan goal 2.3, evaluate new and innovative water management concepts, as well as goal 3.2, ensure cost reasonableness. So tonight's recommendation is by motion, authorize the general manager to 1, enter into purchase agreements for water transfer between sellers and buyers. 2, enter into an agreement among the Department of Water Resources, sellers, and the Alameda County Water District for the conveyance of transfer water for each water seller and water type. 3, file a notice of exemption under the California Environmental Quality Act. And 4, authorize a reserve appropriation of $2,100,000 to cover extraordinary dry year water purchase expenses for fiscal year 2019-20. And with that, I'm happy to address any questions.
Do I have any questions from the board? Hearing none, do I have any questions from the members of the public? I am going to assume that is also a no. Andy, can you help me verify that?
Yeah, I don't see any Q&A. Let me just check real quick. No, no Q&A.
All right, then do I have a motion from the board?
I'll move the staff recommendation on item 5.7. Sethy.
I will second.
Okay, so roll call. Directors Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Huang.
Aye. With that, let's move to the next item. And this is where I say, help, I need to find my script.
Okay, in the meantime, I will let the board and the members of the public know that this is regarding a public hearing and resolution on the replenishment assessment for fiscal year 2020-21.
Okay, here we go. So on behalf of the board of directors, I'd like to welcome the public and your participation in this evening's public hearing. This public hearing will be on the proposed increase to the replenishment assessment rate for groundwater pumped or extracted for purpose other than agriculture and municipal recreation. Thank you for attending online and by phone. Again, the purpose of this public hearing is to consider the proposed increase to the replenishment assessment rate, which only applies to the operation of water wells to extract groundwater, not to most customers, which receive water from ACWD's distribution system. Now, I would like to review ground rules for the public hearing. Process. I will open the public hearing and ACWD staff will make a presentation. The presentation material can be viewed through the online meeting or can be accessed on the district's website with the agenda and materials for this meeting at www.acwd.org. Upon conclusion of the presentation, the board and ACWD staff will receive public comments and/or protests. The board and staff will receive all comments without responding. Upon conclusion of the public comments and/or protests, the board will request input from staff, respond to questions, comments that were raised by the public, deliberate on the issue, and then close the public hearing. Public comment. Each person has 5 minutes to comment. We will require strict compliance with this time limit so that everyone is treated the same way. Again, staff will provide you with 15-second advance warning and will let you know when time's up. Speaker request. Since this meeting is being conducted online and by teleconference, persons who wish to make public comments can indicate so verbally when we open the public comment portion of the hearing. When making public comments, please be sure to unmute your own phone line or computer microphone so that you may be heard. For those participating online that may not have a microphone on their computer, please dial in by phone at the number given on the agenda. If you are participating online and we are unable to hear you during the public comment portion of the hearing, please use the chat box feature of the Zoom interface to get the attention of the board secretary. Please state your name and service address when making verbal comment. Providing this information is voluntary. However, if you haven't already submitted a written protest and would like your comments to be counted as a protest against the proposed increase, stating your name, service address, and intent to protest can be used for this purpose. The public hearing is now open. Staff will make the presentation. I ask you to refrain from asking questions or making comments until the public comment portion of the public hearing. General Manager?
Yes, thank you. So as provided in the district's Replenishment Assessment Act, a public hearing must be held on the second Tuesday in April for the purpose of determining whether and to what extent the cost of replenishing groundwater supplies within the district during fiscal year 2021 will be funded by a replenishment assessment. Staff is proposing a 5.4% increase in the replenishment assessment rate for uses other than agricultural and municipal recreation in fiscal year 2021. This would increase the rate from $460 to $485 per acre foot of groundwater pumped. And I will turn it over to Ms. Heides, who will provide additional information for you. I think. Laura, can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I was muted, little technical difficulty. Okay, thank you. So as provided in the district's Replenishment Assessment Act, a public hearing must be held on the second Tuesday in April.
Laura, I read the first paragraph.
Okay, can I skip to the second paragraph?
Yes, you may.
Great, all right, you provide a little more extra detail there, thank you. As the board may wish to take action immediately following the April 14th, 2020 public hearing, staff has prepared the remaining 3 resolutions required for the replenishment assessment for fiscal year 2020-2021. To provide some background on this item, on November 14th, 2019, the board ordered the preparation of the 2020 survey report on groundwater conditions, also known as the survey report, as provided in Section 7 of the district's Replenishment Assessment Act. As a result, the following actions took place. On January 16th, 2020, letters were sent to all interested parties identified as part of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, also known as SGMA, informing them that the board would be discussing and considering items pertaining to the Replenishment Assessment Act at the February 13th, March 12th, and April 14th, 2020 regular Board of Directors meetings. On February 13th, 2020, the board, 1, received the completed survey report and the 2019 groundwater monitoring report. 2, declared its intent to raise funds by a replenishment assessment in fiscal year 2020-2021. And 3, scheduled a public hearing for April 14th, 2020. At the February 13th board meeting, staff reviewed its recommendation for a 5.4% increase in the replenishment assessment rate for non-agricultural or municipal recreation use in fiscal year 2020-21. This would increase the rate from $460 to $485 per acre foot of groundwater pumped. As required by Proposition 218, affected well owners, operators, and owners of property with production wells were provided written notice of the proposed increase in the replenishment assessment rate for purposes other than agricultural and municipal recreation uses at least 45 days prior to the public hearing. The notice was also posted on the district's website. In addition to information on the proposed increase, the notice included the date, time, and location of the public hearing. On March 12, 2020, staff presented to the board the report's findings and basis for the recommended replenishment assessment. Notice of the time and place of tonight's public hearing was published in the newspaper, the East Bay Times, as required by the Replenishment Assessment Act. At the hearing, which is being held by teleconference due to the COVID-19 shelter-in-place orders and in accordance with the governor's executive orders, all interested parties may be heard in support of or opposition to the proposed replenishment assessment, the survey report, or the board's determinations. Prior to the beginning of tonight's board meeting, the district has not received any comments. For setting the replenishment assessment for the coming fiscal year, the Replenishment Assessment Act specifies the actions that must be taken through board resolution no sooner than the close of the public hearing, but no later than the second Tuesday of May. The resolutions, 1, contain the findings that update groundwater conditions and state the amount of replenishment assessment funds needed to next fiscal year. 2, set the replenishment assessment rates, $8 per acre foot for agricultural and municipal recreation uses, which is the maximum allowed under the Replenishment Assessment Act, and $485 per acre foot for all other uses, and finding that the modifications to the replenishment assessment are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, and 3, provide procedures and statement forms. Should the board wish to extend the hearing or take additional time to consider the resolutions, the board may schedule a special board meeting in order to meet the deadline stipulated in the Replenishment Assessment Act, i.e. the public hearing must be completed on or before the first Tuesday in May, which is May 5th, and the resolutions adopted on or before the second Tuesday in May, which is May 12th. Approval of this item is consistent with Strategic Goal 2.1, maintain and enhance sustainability and reliability of local and regional water supplies, and Strategic Goal 3, improve the district's financial stability and transparency. So tonight, the recommendation before the board is to conduct a public hearing as scheduled and receive comments from the public on the proposed replenishment assessment for fiscal year 2020-21. Then, by motion, adopt the following required resolutions. 1, stating findings and determining need for replenishment assessment. 2, levying a replenishment assessment and finding the replenishment assessment exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. And 3, providing procedures for payment of replenishment assessment. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
So I assume at this point, we will open the public hearing first and the board could combine your question later, or would the board prefer to ask staff question right now? Hearing no questions from the board, let's
I have
open
a comment after the public hearing.
Okay, so why don't we open the public hearing now? Will the district secretary please unmute the meeting participants so they may make public comments, please?
Sure.
Do we have any members of the public that wish to make a comment during this period? I am not seeing any. Mr. Warren, would you verify that we don't have any raised hands or chat?
It doesn't look like anyone is has asked any questions. And the chat, yeah, I think we're good.
Okay. Then if there's no one else, no one wants to address the board, has the district secretary received any comments?
At this time, we have not received any comments by mail, email, or other means.
Thank you. So back to the board. Does any director have any questions or comments for staff?
None from Sethy.
How about Director Weed and Director Sethy, since Director Weed spoke out earlier first?
None from Sethy.
Okay.
Okay. First, I find it informative to note that in these cases that, as I understand, about 96% of this cost will be paid for by ACWD as part of their production. And then that is included in the cost of water production that we then treat and serve the customers at a cost of about 5 times, almost 5 times the well production cost. The second, that there is the potential, we've noted repeatedly for a number of customers, to use well water in lieu of treated water to meet their need for their water supply, particularly irrigation. So I look forward to us, I fully support the effort. I'm glad we've documented the cost of raw well water and would encourage us to look for ways to expand its use. In fact, we had a capital improvement project near the Auto Mall area, which would use raw well water for irrigation, utilizing the purple pipe that we put in that had no other future anticipatory use other than being put in there for regulatory requirements. And there's some real potential here. So thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments from the directors?
No.
Or no?
None from my end.
All right. Hearing none, I will formally close the public hearing. And do I have a motion for this item?
I'll make a motion to move staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Roll
Okay,
call, please.
sure. Directors Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
All right,
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Huang.
Aye. All right, next is reports.
Madam President,
Yes, sir.
if you do not mind, to be polite to our guest, we can cover 6.3.1, presentation of actuarial evaluation for the district's retiree healthcare program.
That would be fine. So let's move item 6.1 up.
6.3.1
3.1.
under staff presentations.
Yes.
And leading this will be initially Jonathan Wunderlich, our manager of finance.
Thank you.
Jonathan, can you hear us? You may be muted.
Yeah, he should be unmuted. I think he would have to use his controls on his phone. There he is.
All right, can you hear me now?
We can.
Yes.
All right, excellent. To comply with financial reporting requirements, the district is required to complete an actuarial valuation of its retiree healthcare program every other year, and we're due to complete a new valuation this spring. Actuarial valuations are always based on data from a specific date in the past, and this valuation is as of June 30, 2019. With the COVID-19 pandemic, that certainly feels like a long time ago, and potentially significant consequences to the valuation resulting from the pandemic could include reduction in the market value of assets in the trust fund and increased future inflation in healthcare premiums. And so those items are not reflected in this valuation because it's as of June 30, 2019. Kevin Watts of McLeod Watts, the district's consulting actuary, will now present the valuation results, and included in his presentation are some options that we could pursue as a district given recent events. So Kevin, the floor is now yours for the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'm not sure how I control that, the screen that I'm seeing on Zoom. Can somebody move to the next slide?
I think you can use, Kevin, I think you could use your mouse or your keyboard to move the screen, but if you want, I can move it for you. Either way, it's fine.
Yeah, it's not moving when I'm trying to click on it. So, okay. Yeah, there we go. So well, first of all, this is our first valuation, McLeod Watts, for the OPEB plan. And we enjoyed meeting the staff. Everybody's very professional and thorough in their questions and in the preparation of both the evaluation and this presentation to the board. So I want to say thanks to them for assisting us with all the information that we needed. This presentation is going to be essentially just providing an overview of what benefits are provided, and then a summary of the data changes that we had from the 2017 valuation. And then we give present two different ways you can look at a funding contribution. One of them is something that GASB requires, something called an actuarially determined contribution. And then there's a second one that's based on what the district is planning in terms of their long-term strategy of paying off the benefit liability. So that's the district funding contribution. Then we'll present the valuation results. And as John said, we'll talk about the office or the potential responses to the market turmoil. And then we can take questions. Feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions in the meantime, but if you want to wait until the end, that's good. So next slide. So the first layer of benefits when you're a participant in the CalPERS medical program is they have something that's a minimum required employer contribution towards these benefits for retirees, and that's governed by PIMCA. And the broad overview is that anybody who completes 5 years of PERS service and either retires at 50 or 52 will get a minimum district contribution. This year, in 2020, that's $139 per month would go towards the payment of medical premiums. The next slide. In addition, the district provides additional benefits on top of the minimum requirements, and those benefits are provided in terms of, we're calling it different tiers of employees, but the tiers are layered based on their date of hire. So for instance, tier 1 are all employees who had a hire date of 8/1/2002 or 4. So for that group, you provide 100% of the cap, which the cap is the greater of a Region 1 highest cost HMO premium or a PERS choice PPO premium. So that's the amount that the district will put in as a benefit for a retiree if they were hired before 2002. Then Tier 2 has a cap that is a percentage based on their years of service. So 50% at 10 years of service and 100% at 20 years of service. And it's the same cap as Tier 1. Then Tier 3 goes through 2019 employment year. And that one is based on district service. And the cap is graded from 25% after 10 years to 100% after 25 years of service. So you can see that the caps have been going down over time in terms of requiring more service. And then also the Tier 3 cap is based on the lesser of the lowest cost HMO premium or the PERS choice PPO premium. And so the amount that's being contributed has been going down over time. And then finally, if you're hired after in 2019 or after, you will only receive the CalPERS required minimum employer contribution. Next. Next slide. Thank you. In addition to the medical benefits, there's a dental, vision, and life insurance benefit. And again, it's based on date of hire. So I'm not going to go through each one of these little bubbles, but essentially you can see that over time, starting on the date of hire in 4 all the way through 4/1/2009, the amount of benefit is getting,
Sorry.
No worries. Well, the amount of the benefit is, that's being paid is dependent on more and more service. So we started with retirements at 50 with 5 years of service, got 100% of the dental and vision, then we went to 10, went to 50 and 15. And by the time we get to 2009 to get the dental, there's no payment of the dental. And so over time, it's just been getting amended to provide either require more service or to not provide that. The same thing with the life insurance, no death benefit provided after higher dates of 4/1/2009 after. Other than that, it's a relatively small death benefit payable. Next. There, the valuation, we collected new data, and in comparison, it wasn't drastically different. We had 6 fewer active employees between 2017 and 2019, and we had 19 more retirees receiving benefits from the district. And then you can see in the bottom chart the breakdown of the various tiers of benefits. And you've got a group of Tier 1 who makes up the majority of it, but those people are becoming fewer and fewer in terms of actives, and they're going into the retirement status. And then over time, you'll have more and more active tier 4. So the distribution of your retiree group will start growing in terms of tier 1, tier 2, and then obviously as people retire and either don't take the benefit or pass away, then you'll get fewer and fewer tier 1. So it's going to be sort of a wave. You'll go through the waves of the various tiered retirees.
This is Director Sethy. I have a quick question here.
Sure.
Under participants by tier, where it says active, is that the age of the participant?
No, those are the counts. So in other words, we have 49 active tier 1 employees.
Oh, I see. It's by the tier that they're in. Okay.
Yeah. And
okay, I got it now. I got it.
Okay, good. So next. So our actuarially determined contribution is a requirement for GASB reporting purposes that when you're funding, that we calculate a sort of a long-term, ongoing annual contribution amount. And the purpose of this particular contribution is it will appear in your financial statements, and what you actually contribute will be compared to it. And so in this case, there's 2 components of it. You can see it in the first bubble goal of it's a normal cost, which is the amount of benefits that are earned in terms of the value of benefits that are earned each year by the active employees. And then anything that's unfunded, so if you have a liability that you haven't quite paid for yet, which you do at this point, you make an amortization payment on it, kind of like paying off a mortgage. And that's the payment for unfunded liability. And the total of those 2 things is your actuarially determined contribution. So the normal cost for this valuation for fiscal 2020 is 1.2 million. The amortization payment is 2.1 million. And so the actuarially determined contribution for 2020 is $3.2 million.
May I note, John Weed, that this is a reporting requirement, not a funding requirement. And there are some districts such as San Francisco, which we're responsible for some of their OPEB, which is not being funded. Yes,
that's true. And actually it's not, I mean, for those districts that are making contributions, they don't have a trust, these calculations aren't required. But when we are making ongoing contributions, and therefore being able to use determined liabilities, we calculate actuarially determined contributions. So in this case, the district uses a smooth value to stabilize contributions over time. And they basically do is you average the assets over a 5-year period and then just make sure that the market value doesn't fall below 80%, or the smooth value doesn't fall below 80% or go over 120% of the market value. So you smooth asset values, but make sure it doesn't get too far out of range. And this year, the discount rate for reporting purposes is 6.75%. So next. So then the district's funding policy, that was another, the ADC was something for reporting, but the district has decided that you're going to try to get to a fully funded status by 2032. So as of the valuation at 6/30/19, you had a $28.3 million unfunded actuarial accrued liability. So the liability for the plan exceeded the assets of the plan by $28.3 million. The goal by 2032 is to move that unfunded status to 0. In other words, full funding is when your market value of your assets equals your actuarial accrued liability. For purposes of these targets, the district has decided to use an adverse deviation margin, just meaning that we're going to lower the discount rate slightly from what the long-term return that we're expecting, and so we're using 6.5% as the discount rate. And for 2021, the contribution, the target funding contribution determined on this basis is 3.7 million. So slightly higher, $500,000 higher than the prior actuarially determined contribution.
This is Director Sethy. Just a comment here, which I think Director Weed would be in favor of too. We dropped down from 6.75 to 6.5 on the discount rate. I'm jumping ahead to the end of your presentation, but I would encourage us as we go through your presentation to think about lowering that even further to 6.25.
Director Sethy is correct. I concur in reducing our discount rate. The private sector, the IRS has a IRS directed discount rate of 4.4%. As government entities, we're much higher.
Okay. I mean, basically there's no funding requirement for these benefits. So how you fund them is really up to, it's a policy decision. So we do have clients that will use a very conservative discount rate, you know, that you could use for funding purposes. For instance, instead of 625, you could use 425. And what that would do over time is you would make higher early contributions, and then assuming that your trust really does earn something closer to the 6.75 or 6.5, over time your contributions would be reduced because you were essentially funding on a faster basis, assuming when you used let's say a 4% discount rate, you were assuming that that's what you earn in the trust. That's the implicit assumption. So, you know, if you wanted to make higher contributions, you could lower the discount rate even further and to 6.25, and then over time, depending on if you earned what we expect you are going to earn, your contributions would just come down over time. So
and I think that's a very good point. It is something that the board needs to discuss. It is a policy issue that I am sure will be bringing back in one agenda item or another. But for now, I would suggest that we move on with this presentation, please.
Okay, next. The overall valuation result, June 2019, your actuarial accrued liability increased between the 2017 valuation and the 2019 valuation by 7.2 million. So you're at a $59.1 million liability. Your market value of assets increased more than that, increased by 10.3 million from 20.5 to 30.8 million. And that dropped your unfunded liability between the valuations 3.1 million. So essentially, you're doing what you're trying to do, which is unfunded time. Your targeting contributions, you can see, just tick up each year from 2021 to 2023, going from 3.7 to 3.9 million. Next. This really early phase of evaluation is out what the district to be paying in benefits over time, and this is what our projection says based on all the assumptions in the actuarial report, all the things we have to assume, and a very long-term projection, as you can see. We expect the benefits to go from roughly $3 million currently, and would hit a high in and around 2040 of about 6 million, and then drop down over time. This chart only considers current active employees and current retirees. So there's no provision being made for people filling in as people retire. One thing that's good to notice here is that there's a gray set of bars just over the other two set of bars, the orange and the darker ones. And that's the amount that the benefits would be if our assumption about medical inflation was low by 1% every year. So in other words, medical inflation in each future year is 1% higher than what we're assuming. And you can see that there's a material change. So instead of maxing out at around $6 million, it maxes out closer to 8. So that's part of the risk of, you know, the various assumptions. We think ours are reasonable, but these are obviously there's some variation that's going to occur in the future. Then next. And this is sort of your historical schedule of funding progress. So we go back to 2011 where you were funded about 13.5% assets divided by the liability, and over time you've been increasing that steadily to where right now we're at about 52.8%. And obviously 2032, the district's goal is to make that 100%. And next. Okay, so we had a finance committee had obviously about what's going on in the market right now. We have had quite a drop. It's recovered about 50% of the losses low. But you know, there's a few options on how you could reflect market shocks like this. And there may be more, but one of them is to just wait until 2021 to reflect any market losses due to the coronavirus shock. This would be, you know, we have a process, we do valuations every 2 years, we make contributions based on that. Anything that occurs between now and then, we'll pick up in the next valuation. Another one is you could simply look at what you, am I still on?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good. My screen blipped on that. The other thing to do is make an estimate, let's say at June 30 of 2020, once we get the actual asset values, we could do an adjustment to the contributions from that point on. So in other words, we're not going to do a new valuation, but we might say, well, based on the way market performance was during 1920 year, maybe we should be increasing our contributions earlier than just the next valuation. And then the third option is that you could perform a new valuation as of 2020. So you get a new valuation of assets and liabilities. Number one and number two in our estimate is plenty in terms of a response to the long-term funding. And obviously it's less costly because we wouldn't have to perform a new valuation. And with that, I think we're open for questions.
Any questions or comments from the board?
I'll make a comment if I might.
Unlike
Cal,
hold on a second. Were there not a few more slides here?
I'm sorry?
Director Sethy's asking, were there not a few more slides here?
There were not.
Okay, so that's the end of the presentation. I was looking at the payoff schedule or schedules that were proposed, I think by John Wunderlich, both for OPEB under different discount rates and for our retiree plan as well. So I would like to make some comments referring that, but I'll hold back for right now.
Okay, why don't we start with Director Weed?
Okay. I would note that unlike CalPERS, OPEB is totally within, the policies are totally within the control of the board. And therefore our responsibility and our potential capability of getting the full funding for our employees, that the people running the CBERT program have indicated that they are looking at being able to set up subcategories within an individual plan. In this case, they were looking at initially public safety versus non-public safety employees in some districts. But that same technique could be used to identify the plan funding in separate pockets for those who have retired and those who are still employed. And I would hope that we would be able to look at the potential of setting up an actuarial study to show that we had 100% funding, given our suggestions of a 6.5 or whatever discount rate we use. And then I separate that from the funding for the current employees. I think that gives us a clearer picture on what our responsibilities are.
I would I would support that, Director Sethy speaking here.
Okay, thank you, Director Weed. Director Sethy, do you have comments?
Well, comments from other directors first?
Director Gunther, do you have any questions or comments?
Well, I mean, I'm going to hold for a minute. I think we're doing, I mean, everything in the market right now is crazy. We're in a situation that the country hasn't been in since probably, I don't know, 1918. So my feelings at the moment are not to change what we're doing, but I'll keep an open mind and listen.
Director Akbari, do you have any comments?
No questions or comments right now. I'm listening.
Okay, so I'll just make some very brief comments here. And I'm actually referring to some of the schedules that Jonathan Wunderlich offered that were reviewed in the last Finance Committee meeting. Jim, in concurrence with you, I would stay with the status quo right now. I would not request that we do a revaluation until we get through the next fiscal year, because I think it's a very knee-jerk reaction in the middle of a very volatile market situation. And I think we would have a much clearer picture if we wait until the end of the next fiscal year, next June 2021, and then make a reevaluation. We certainly have the monies to rebalance things out at that point. So I'm not worried about that. And number two, I would encourage us as a board. I'm not sure whether it's appropriate in this meeting or a subsequent meeting where we're having a policy discussion, but I would encourage us to get down to a lower discount rate, 6.25. I would even be willing to go lower, 6.0. And then look at what those contribution requirements might be. So I take a very conservative point of view on this right now. But in the larger scheme of things, the 28 million or so that we have as unfunded liability here, and I'm saying this for public comment really, is very manageable for the district over the next decade. This doesn't cause me a lot of heartache here. I know we can manage this. Those are my comments.
Director Sethy, this is John Weed. We're currently on a 2-year cycle. So if we were to maintain the status quo, we would revisit this in 2 years, not 1.
Right, that's what I'm proposing. Stay with the status quo.
For a 2-year cycle, you mentioned looking at it again next year, would be 2 years from now.
Next year is the end of the 2-year cycle.
And
Our last valuation was in 2019.
Okay. Well, thank you. For some reason, I thought we were coming up for June 30th of this year.
So this is John jumping in. So the next valuation on the normal schedule would be with the data as of June 30th, 2021, but it would probably not be until the spring of 2022 that the valuation would be completed by the actuary, and we would be reporting on it to the board.
Why is there such a time lag on revaluation?
Well, it's just about when we can get the data and get the actuary going. You know, potentially it could be sped up a little bit, but because it doesn't affect any reporting or contributions until a full year has lapsed, there's generally not a lot of urgency, but potentially could be done a little sooner.
Okay.
And then I wanted to just quickly respond to a couple of the comments and questions. The valuation from McLeod Watts does identify the district's liability for retirees and active employees separately, so that information is available within the report. Unfortunately, at this point, SERPT, the trust fund managed by CalPERS that we use to fund these benefits, does not allow you to have separate accounts or to invest in multiple of their strategies. So it's kind of, it all has to be combined. So we do report in the valuation for actives versus retirees, but on the funding side, you know, with SERPT, we're not able to break that out. And then in regard to the discount rate, traditionally, you know, in the past, we have looked at a discount rate that is 0.5 percentage point less than what is typically used by the folks managing the respective funds. And so, you know, with a 6.75% discount rate on the retiree trust fund, that's why we also wanted to show the 6.25% option in those schedules that were shared. On the pension fund side, CalPERS is still at a 7% discount rate, so a 50 or a 0.5% margin would still be at the 6.5% discount rate on the pension side.
Thank you, Jonathan, for answering those questions. And I think the discount rate topic probably will be much more appropriate to discuss when we are talking about rates and charges.
Yeah, and we were thinking that we might also bring some of these items to the budget workshop.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the directors?
Director Huang, let me ask a question real quick.
Of course.
What is the connection in your mind between rates and charges and the discount rate on these retiree health plans? I don't make the connection.
I think last time we talked about discount rates, it was in a budget workshop. Staff, correct me if I'm wrong, because we wrote that into a discussion with accelerated payment, holding our end day to be the same. If we change the discount rate, I believe that does impact our payment.
I see. Okay. Yes, you're right. If we look at our financial dashboard that we have, we had a number plugged in there where we could make changes to our forecast. So yeah, okay, I get it now.
Okay. So yeah, now that's when I think we should have a really good discussion about this, because however we choose to move it, if we choose to move it, there will be some sort of rate impact or impact to our project. So I think during budget workshop probably is a good time for us to take this apart and see where we want to go. All right, with that, any other comments, questions from the director? Staff, comments, questions? If not, I would like to say thank you to Mr. Watts.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much for hanging with us in our technical issues.
Yeah, I was supposed to come down and meet everybody, but this is about as good as we can do under the circumstances.
Yep, well, there's some camaraderie in trying to get used to an online meeting. How's that?
Yeah, we're all amateurs.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
All right, with that, guys, let's move on to Item 6.1 and 6.2, General Manager, is this correct? I am in the right place, right?
You are in the place that you want to be, which is sort of right after the action calendar covering reports.
Okay, sorry.
So staff does not have any additional information planned for the board under either board committee reports or board operational reports this evening. But we're available to respond to any questions.
Any questions or comments from directors on item 6.1 or 6.2?
I have comments on 6.2.3, water production report.
You have the floor, Director Sethy.
Okay. I shared these comments with General Manager Bob Shaver. I sat in the BOSCA Board Policy Committee meeting last week and was learning about what is going on throughout the Bay Area on water demand consumption for the Hetch Hetchy customers. It was reported in the meeting that San Francisco's taken the hardest hit of any of the BOSCA members. A lot of the public works departments and city council members that are participants in that meeting were reporting hard hits as well, especially Sunnyvale and Santa Clara, San Jose, where there's a large amount of high-tech companies in proportion to the residential customers. It was also reported that unlike ACWD, whether it's cities or agencies, have not made adjustments in their service charge or fixed charge in proportion to their commodity charge. So just like when we entered the drought, cities, public work departments, and the agencies are taking a real hit. In looking at our water production report through the end of March, we were about even with forecast on January, and we ran about 5 million MGD ahead in February, another 5 MGD ahead in March. We've had a cool April to start, so we're maybe a little bit down on water production right now. But with the rate increase that we had effective March 1st, our financials are actually looking pretty good right now. And I'm just offering my opinion that it took us a while to get through a 500% rate increase on our service charge over a few years. But that is protecting the district right now financially as we go through this situation here. I've been particularly attentive to what the loss of water volume is to commercial and industrial in our Tri-City area, and trying to measure whether we're making that up in some way or if it's a true loss, as other communities are experiencing. And so I'm actually pretty happy right now that with all the decisions the board has made over the last year, we're going into this COVID-19 situation right now on a much more secure financial basis than we have had in any other downturn. I have asked the staff in our Water Resources Committee beginning last month to report at each monthly meeting on the daily MGD production. So if there's any correlation between what's going on with the coronavirus and demand, we can pick up on it, early. So I'm looking forward to that next report later this month. But based on what I heard last week at the Bosca board policy meeting, compared to cities like Hayward, that's a Bosca customer, South Bay customers, Peninsula customers, and kind of the grieving process that they were going through, I think that we're doing pretty good right now. It's not like, you know, you're in a perfect market, but I think we are managing ourselves pretty well based on what's going on. Those are my comments.
Thank you for your comments, Director Sethy. Any other comments, questions from directors on items 6.1 and 6.2?
Well, let me follow up a little bit on the John Weed. This dysfunctional rate structure we have, which still doesn't match our fixed cost with our fixed income and our variable cost with variable income, allows us to be leveraged on the upside as demand improves. But when demand drops, and drops not because of COVID-19, but rather a drought, then we go into a real problem. And it's a needless problem. I would hope that we can try to align our fixed and variable costs with our fixed and variable revenues. That would be a rational business practice and protect us from these wild swings.
And we can have that conversation in the appropriate forum when we talk about rates. All right, with that, I assume there are no more questions from the rest of the directors on items 6.1 and 6.2. If not, let's move on to item 6.4, General Manager's report.
Yes, thank you, President Huang. I do have a presentation to provide you an update on some of the activities that the district has undertaken as a result of the current pandemic that we're all experiencing. It's about 14 slides. I'll go through this information quickly. So let's see if it works. I think Andy has given me control, but I don't seem to be able to control it.
Oh.
Can you turn the slide, Andy?
Sure, sorry.
Okay, so what I wanted to cover this evening is just the district's overall objectives as we navigate this current challenging environment that we're in. Talk a little bit about how things have changed since the board last met on March 26th. Review the board actions and how that translated into staff policies. Current district operational status, and talk about some recent district actions. So with that, next slide, Andy. So really, what I've been communicating to staff as well as directors is we really have three objectives, and they're not mutually exclusive. The first is to keep our employees safe. The second is continue providing essential services, while of course prioritizing the most critical services in the event that we have resource limitations. And then lastly, and to a large extent, this was with the board's assistance, support employees and their families that are experiencing health-related and childcare challenges as a result of the pandemic. Next slide, Andy. So the operating environment has changed in very significant ways since the board last met. And probably one of the biggest ways was on March 31st, the Alameda County Health Officer issued an order that really kind of clarified and limited the construction activities that are now allowed. Prior to that, the governor and Alameda County both basically said that construction is considered a critical activity. But now the definition has been narrowed by the county to whereby the district now will not be supporting all development related work. So for example, housing that has at least 10% income restricted units, or projects that are required as a result of providing shelters and temporary housing, or hospitals and healthcare, those are considered essential construction projects. But a shopping center may not be. So the district staff has been in close communications with the three cities to determine really what the land use being proposed is and whether or not it meets the requirements of this latest order. And one of the trickier elements of this is that the order actually allows construction sites to continue having work on them, providing that that work is required so that the construction site can be shut down and left in a secure manner for some period of time. So we also need the city's assistance on that, because it's possible that the district has been asked to install, say, for example, a new fire service for an existing construction site. And even though that work may be ceasing because it's not meeting the other requirements of the order, district staff may still be required to go ahead and install that fire service so that the construction site is not left in a vulnerable and dangerous condition. The district's own capital improvement program, with just a few minor exceptions, is all considered either essential infrastructure or essential government function and can continue. So staff is still working on the capital improvement program, but what this new order limits is the work that we do to support other construction projects. Next slide, Andy. And here's sort of examples of the work that we are doing. Next slide, please. So in addition, on April 1st, the governor announced that K through 12 schools will be physically closed through the balance of this school year. Where that impacts us is primarily for our own workforce. So again, some of the board policies that were recently adopted, recently implemented by me, have really been helpful to help employees deal with the school and daycare closures. The district continues to have daily meetings with the Alameda County EOC group. And, you know, there's the current statistics, which as of the latest date, April 12th, there's been 888 cases of COVID-19 in Alameda County with 23 deaths. Statewide, the numbers are much larger. In Alameda County, so far, about 9,100 tests have been performed, and about 9% of those tests have had positive results. District has secured priority testing for our own workforce, and to date, 4 employees have volunteered to be tested, and so far, the test results have been negative. The district is not requiring employees to get tested at this time. Those are meet and confer issues with the unions, and there's mixed support within the unions themselves for any required testing. Next slide, please. Most recently, the federal government has issued new guidance for critical infrastructure workers, which ACWD employees are, that may have had exposure to a person that either is suspected or confirmed with COVID-19. And this is significant because prior to this order, basically if an employee was in this condition or in this environment, they were going to be quarantined for 14 days. So now what the federal government is saying is that these employees can potentially come back to work, providing that an organization can meet these requirements. And they involve temperature monitoring, perhaps a self-assessment questionnaire every day, wearing a mask, social distancing, of course. So there's some disinfection and cleaning requirement. And if employees become sick, of course, they should be sent home immediately. Staff is looking at these guidelines with the idea of perhaps implementing some of these provisions just to increase the safety of our own workforce. And we're working on protocols to potentially implement some of these measures. Next slide, Andy. In terms of the board, What you did on the 26th was you adopted a declaration upholding and recognizing the state of emergencies that were passed by the state and the county, and you authorized me to take some limited and temporary actions. First was the implementation of the Families First Coronavirus Response Act and enhancements to that act, as well as some additional temporary benefit flexibility modifications. And I just thought I'd review those with you to make sure that you understand what the district is doing as a result of the authority that the board has provided me. Next slide, please. So in terms of temporary sick and leave benefits, really what the district has done is piggybacked on the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which really is just an expansion of the existing 12-week FMLA leave for employees. And with this expansion that the federal government just adopted, the first 2 weeks are unpaid, but the remaining 10 weeks, unlike regular FMLA, employees could receive 2/3 of their regular pay. But you may recall that there were caps on what that 2/3 pay could be that don't really reflect the cost of living in the Bay Area. So the board authorized no cap to that. And we also allow employees to take intermittent leave so that they can support their families that are dealing with issues because of either school closures or daycare closures. And employees need to request this leave in advance and have it be approved. The other thing the board authorized me to do was to provide up to 80 hours of additional sick leave for COVID-19 related impacts, and the district will pay that if needed at full rate of pay. Staff has made these benefits effective as of March 26th, and they will run to the end of the calendar year. Next, Andy. In addition, the board authorized me to make some additional modifications, really kind of a flexibility issue for the existing benefits that employees enjoy. So employees may use all of their accruals for childcare impacts, including sick leave as well. The sick leave for family sick leave cap has been removed temporarily. Now we have unrestricted accrual usage for probational employees. And this is important because employees are under probation for 6 months after beginning service with the district. And those employees do not have many accruals to use in the event that they're impacted by the virus. We've also working on the ability to advance 80 hours of sick leave if needed. And that would be especially helpful for those same employees. The district already has a sick leave donation program, but what we're looking to do is sort of improve that for the current conditions by implementing a major disaster leave, sick leave sharing program. We're waiving some sick leave standards, like not always requiring doctor's notes and things like that. And this would be effective for all MCP staff on April 1st through the balance of the calendar year, but it's also subject to meet and conferring with our unions before being applicable to represented employees. Next slide, Andy. In terms of operational status for the district, we're currently not experiencing any major issues. We are, of course, winding down some development-related work, as I mentioned. About 40% of our employees are now teleworking. Water demand remains seasonally low, but a little higher than last year because it's been dry, especially in February and March, as Director Sethy noticed. You know, once we get into April, May, I think the jury's still out what water demands will do. And that's especially important because one of our more vulnerable facilities, arguably, is water treatment plant number 2 because of the certified operators that are required to run that plant. The plant is operational now. but obviously we're developing contingency plans. And one of those contingency plans involves, if needed, if we had issues with employee absenteeism because of employees being impacted by the virus, if water demands remain low, that's not particularly great for our financial position, but gives us more flexibility because that would allow us to shut down that plant even in July or August if demands remain low. We have no issues with our current supply chains, besides for some personal protective equipment and hygiene materials, but even those are okay now. And we have had no employees test positive for COVID-19. Next slide, please. And then there's just a number of actions that we've taken that I just wanted to make sure that the board is aware of now. And, you know, we have maintained our emergency operations center and activated in virtual status since March 12th. And that group has morning meetings every work day. We are maximizing social distancing by implementing what we call a micro team approach. And that means maximizing the number of employees teleworking to reduce employee to employee contact, which has had some issues as well, because when employees begin teleworking, they still need materials, they still need to communicate with their coworkers. And so what we've done is we're developing a teleworking committee so that we can support those employees and keep them, you know, with supplies and deal with issues that looks like this could continue for a while. So it's not just a couple of weeks and employees come back to the office. This could be an extended phenomenon. Regarding the employees that do still need to come to work, we've staggered shifts, like for our utility workers. We've repurposed all our pool vehicles, so hopefully we don't have employees having to ride in the same vehicle. We've changed our report to work location. Some employees report to truck or work from truck. For some field employees, we've reduced the number of employees that report to water treatment plant number 2, again, trying to protect one of the critical work groups of the district. We've implemented field signs, which employees are using now, that inform the public to please stay away from our field activities and maintain that social distance. I mentioned PPP and hygiene materials. We are closely managing our inventory of those materials and using a comprehensive approach to do so. Currently, we do have sufficient supplies. All employees now have masks that they can use. We've increased the routine cleaning in our common use areas, and I almost send emails to all employees practically on a daily basis now, communicating the amazing amounts of change that has been incorporated into how the district functions over the last month. Next slide, please. In terms of additional actions, we are continuing to plan. So far, it hasn't been that bad, but if needed, we may have to change our operational mode. So we've begun cross-training employees for critical operation duty. We're securing contract employees, especially operators right now, and we've reached out to retired annuitants to help us with anything that could possibly come up. We've provided letters to contractors that work with us so that their activities hopefully are not sort of interrupted by law enforcement. In terms of customer service, our headquarters facility remains closed to the general public. One benefit of that is many more customers are now taking advantage of electronic bill payment options. So that's actually going to hopefully have a long-term benefit to the district. We are still providing our full array of conservation assistance to customers. It's just occurring without field visits. And we've suspended, as you know, our late fees, collections, and shutoffs for now. Information technology has done a great job, including allowing us to have Zoom board meetings. Next slide, please. So in terms of next step, we're going to continue operating in the incident command structure mode with our virtual EOC meetings. We're going to continue monitoring the federal and state guidelines, which basically come out revised almost on a daily basis. We're coordinating closely with Bay Area agencies as well as agencies across the state and nationally to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to protect our employees and still operate, efficiently. As I mentioned, we've increased our communications, and I plan to provide regular updates to the board. And the next board meeting is April 23rd. So if there's any significant new information to share related to COVID-19, I will do that at that time. Otherwise, we'll wait for the regular board meeting in May. So with that, I'm available to answer any questions that the board may have.
Questions or comments from the directors?
I have a quick comment.
Director Sethy.
Bob, I would like to send you, for distribution to our board and staff, a eulogy of the handshake. That there are very few cultural changes that we go through worldwide over a short period of time, like hats went out of style with President Kennedy. Ties went out of style with the Silicon Valley venture capital culture, and suits as well. And now, I mean, historically speaking, this is kind of big that we can't shake hands anymore. So this is a eulogy to the handshake, and I think I'd just like to share it with the board.
Thank you, Director Sethy. I think Director Wee has a question or comment.
Yes, several. First of all, thank you for the work you've done so far. It's a major challenge to change the administrative procedures. And I think I particularly note that you've identified water treatment plant number 2 as one of our more vulnerable assets that we can work to, is not needed to meet our year-round requirements. It's nice to have, but it's not, it can be made. And but I would note that there are some additional steps we can do on our CIP to enhance the ability to bypass water treatment plant number 2s and allow it to be shut down indefinitely. And that was in pumps at Whitfield and some other issues. Next, I think there's some manpower issues we can look and revisit, such as decoupling meter reading from billing. And that would achieve extraordinary savings in our cost of our meter programs. But fundamentally, there's a fundamental issue I've had with the staff from day one. I view this as a health issue with lethal implications to workers and their families. Initially, I suggested that we monitor employees on a daily basis when they came to work, and was told we couldn't do that because of regulations of privacy. And quickly that was reversed, and apparently the guidance changed and we could monitor people. I would hope that we could bring on board and engage a consultant who has a public health medical background. We currently don't have that expertise among our current consultants and our current staff. That this is evolving. The methodologies of approaching it are evolving, and that we're moving toward universal screening and testing of the population. But most importantly, we should be in the forefront of that as an organization with critical needs and great support for our employees. And that's best done under licensed medical advice. This is going to be with us for a long while. A lot of the nature of this agent is that, and virus, is that it can be asymptomatic and people can carry it without knowing it or without showing symptoms. And unless we take a more progressive and approach toward testing, to date, only 4 employees of 230 have been tested. I'm concerned and remain unsatisfied that our response has been as active as it needs to be. So my comment.
Thank you, Director Weed, for your comments. I'll just like to clarify that we are following all directions and advice from the Alameda County Public Health Officers, and we're complying and following all the requirements of CDC and the state of California in protection of our employees.
I would suggest the standard, our own standard should be higher.
I know we have a disagreement, and I know you wish for the standard to be higher, and I am sure our general manager is following these issues and the fast evolving guidelines, and will do a very good job ensure that our employees are protected. So any other directors have comments or questions? Director Akbari, do you wish to speak?
Sorry, my Zoom crashed. I believe somebody said my name.
Oh, okay. No, your video was coming in and out for me, so I was wondering, were you trying to catch my attention? Do you have any questions for the general manager?
No questions. I appreciate the effort that staff has been putting in during these challenging times, and as well with our general manager and the team that we have. I think these are unique challenges that we face, and I appreciate all the precaution that we're taking to make sure that our employees are kept safe, their families are kept safe, and our customers are kept safe.
Thank you, Director Akbari. Director Gunther, do you have any comments or questions?
I'd just like to comment. I work for a public transit agency, well, the contractor for one. So we're also very aware of safety and testing, et cetera. And I think the district's doing just fine. From my perspective over there, where we work, as to what I see going on here, I don't think we're out of line at all. I think our numbers are fine, and we should continue the course. That's all I have for today.
Thank you very much, Director Gunther. Then with that, shall we move on to item 7, Director's comments, reports, meeting attended, and agenda item requests. So why don't we start with Director Wee, since he also has item 7.1, report back from the Aqua Washington DC conference.
Yes, thank you. I had the opportunity to once again attend the conference and was there for the prior day of the conference, where we were able to join a team and went around Capitol Hill lobbying for particular issues and groups, and I was in the water supply area. You look for one or two, you hope to bring back at least a few nuggets. And one I found particularly interesting was on the Water Resources Development Act, WRDA, which at the House of Representatives covers the Corps of Engineers projects, present and past. And then on the Senate side, it's a little broader and they come together. But it was noted that in a reservoir in Southern California, under the district of the chair of the most important committee, that they added 3 words to the WRDA bill for a reservoir, which was identified for flood control. And they added the words "and water supply." And with those 3 words created 7,000 acre-feet of water storage. I would note that we have that same potential at Del Valle in creating 50,000 acre-feet of potential storage that's now identified for flood control, which could be accomplished by simply building a flood retention structure in the Lang Valley. So there's flexibility out there where we don't need to be stuck with regulations and guidance that was written 50 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Weed. That's your report back for item 7.1. Do you have any other items under Director comment?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Then Director Sethy, do you have any item, Director's comments, questions, requests?
I have one request, which I brought up in the past, and we have still not, to my knowledge, had a report back to the board or committee. And it's on the state of affairs with our fire hydrants, the 8,500 fire hydrants we have in the district, and on repairing and painting these fire hydrants and servicing them. I can go back to, this is almost 10 years of a director speaking up here about this issue. And we apparently did engage pretty well with Alameda County Fire Department on upgrading, taking care of our fire hydrants for Union City and Newark, where they're responsible. But if you go around Fremont, I don't think we've made any progress with the Fremont Fire Department. And I drive by fire hydrants continuously, including in front of our district, that just look like they're in shambles. And I really would like to get somebody who can get on top of this and figure out what is the right relationship with each of our respective fire departments and how we maintain and get these fire hydrants upgraded and painted properly. I go to other communities around the East Bay here, and most of the communities I'm in visiting have really well-maintained fire hydrants. It's like it's a point of pride for the community, but apparently not with ours. And I remember Director Glenn Reynolds at his very last meeting in November 2010, before I started on the board, was talking about the very same issue. And I promised him I would carry through to make sure that his request was followed through on. But here we are 10 years later, and we still haven't got it done. And it's starting to become a real pet peeve with me, to put it politely. So I would really like to request that we take some actions and have a comprehensive board report back from our staff. Thank you.
So,
Yeah, so that's not a problem. I know that operations staff has been working on this issue. We paused it for the last month, but it would be no problem to bring a report back to the board in May.
Thank you.
thank you. All right, Director Gunther, any items?
No, I'm good for tonight.
Okay. Director Akbari?
I'm good for today as well.
Okay, so with that, next item is closed session. Before I start reading the actually, I'll have the general manager read the closed session items. But before that, before we go to the closed session, I'll remind the directors to remember to mute their microphone and actually turn off their video cameras before they get on the closed session call. Okay. General Manager, would you do the pleasure?
Sure, thank you, Madam President. Yeah, so the idea is that when we go to closed session, you'll keep your Zoom active with a mute and with the camera off, and we will conduct the closed session with conference call. And the conference call information was emailed to you by the district secretary today. I'm obviously not going to express that that number here in open session. So I'm hoping that you can consult your email for the conference call information. So in terms of what the board will be reviewing in closed session, we have 3 items this evening. Item 8.1 is pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.9D4, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation, 1 potential case. The second item is item 8.2, pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel. It involves existing litigation. The name of the case is Bonnie Kessner and Andrea McCartney Page, individually and on behalf of all others similarly situated and on behalf of the general public, et al. Versus the City of Santa Clara, Alameda County Water District, et al. Complaint for damages and equitable relief, petition for writ of mandate, case number 20 CV 364054. And the third item is pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.8, conference with real property negotiators. The property is the N3 Cattle Company, consisting of 131 parcels and approximately 50,535 acres in Alameda County, Santa Clara County, San Joaquin County, and Stanislaus County. Assessors' parcel numbers were furnished by the owner's representative and were included in the board packet. Agency negotiators are Robert Shaver and Ed Stevenson. The negotiating parties are the N3 Cattle Company, LLC, Wren Jr. and Wren Jr. TR. Under negotiation, price and terms of payment.
Thank you, sir. Then with that, that's adjourned to the closed session at 8:01 p.m. Please remember to mute your microphone and turn off your camera, please.
I'm having trouble finding the phone number. I thought I printed it out.
Hi, John.
All right, so it's 11:50. The board is back from closed session. General Manager, would you do the honor on reporting back?
Certainly. In closed session, the board met regarding 3 different items. Item 8.1, pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.9D4. It involves conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation, 1 potential case, and no action was taken. Item 8.2, pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.9D1, involved conference with legal counsel, existing litigation. The name of the case is Bonnie Kessner and Andrea McCartney Page, individually and on behalf of other similarly situated and on behalf of the general public et al. Versus the City of Santa Clara, Alameda County Water District et al. Complaint for damages and equitable relief, petition of writ of mandate, case number 20 CV 364054. There's no reportable action taken. Instruction was given to general counsel. Item 8.3, pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.8, conference with real property negotiators. The property is the N3 Cattle Company, consisting of 131 parcels and approximately 50,535 acres in the counties of Alameda, Santa Clara, San Joaquin, and Stanislaus. Assessors parcel numbers were furnished by the owner's representative and are attached in the board packet. The agency negotiators are Robert Shaver and Ed Stevenson. The negotiating parties are the N3 Cattle Company, LLC, Wren Jr. and Wren Jr. TR for trust. Under negotiation, price and terms of payment. No action was taken. Direction was given to agency negotiators. And that is the closed session report.
Well, thank you very much. I guess now that concludes all the items, and I will call the meeting adjourned, please.
Okay, at
Thank you,
11:51.
Oh, and somebody says hello. She just come by to retrieve me.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.